Good evening, everybody. This is Cinnamon Noir. Welcome back to Circle of the Moon. So in the last episode, we got pretty much to the end of the underground waterway, and now we're going to be fighting the boss, who might not be what you think, given that this is like a sewer, right? So you'd think, maybe like some kind of monster, or like a gross dragon, like in Dark Souls. Something befitting the really grotesque nature of this area. Although I have to say, as sewers go, this one looks remarkably clean. Maybe that's one of the things our amulet did, was it cleaned up all the sewage? And who knows, maybe the reason it was poisoning us before actually wasn't because of Dracula's evil magic. Maybe it was just because it was full of raw sewage. This castle in Vienna, or wherever it was presumably inhabited at some point. We are very low on hearts, but I'm going to go ahead and risk it. Because, what's life if you don't take risks? Well, often, if you do take risks, life is death, but, we can get by anyway. I'm not worried. I have no healing items, but it doesn't matter. This I was not expecting. Well, not the first time. I've played this game before, so I was expecting it. Oh, that sounds reasonable. I just love that line. You are delusional. This game's better written than Symphony of the Night, but it still sometimes comes up with corny lines. I also like Nathan's just, shut up! Oh no, you got Hugh. You turned him into an asshole. I mean, he was already an asshole, but now he's even more of an asshole. And she turns into something really weird. So kind of similar to what that one woman turns into on the clock tower. Like some weird hybrid of like a death skull and a naked woman. This is what Camilla turns into. I think the idea is she's supposed to be some kind of succubus, but it's really weird. Anyway, I do actually like this battle a lot. Camilla is one of the fairer boss enemies in the game. Aside from that attack, which is kind of bullshit. But, yeah, unlike, a Dramalak, who was also this giant boss who was in the middle of the room, Camilla's attacks don't just flood the whole room with, projectiles you can't dodge or get rid of. You can actually destroy these little purple orbs, which it's very helpful to do so because they last longer than you'd think. She's actually kind of a forerunner to some of Dracula's attacks, which is appropriate because in this game she's like Dracula's main... I was going to say main squeeze. She's like Dracula's main follower. Now, anyway, her boss design is kind of weird, but I do really love the design of this room. It's really cool looking. I love all of the water pouring down the walls, and then there's weird statues where it's kind of hard to tell what they are. I think they're supposed to be women pouring out water from an urn. One thing I do not like about Camilla's boss design is the very H.R. Giger-like wires going up through that skull. It's very, bizarre and gothic, but also kind of contrived. Anyway, I've used up all my crosses here. And I'm actually playing okay. This is better than I normally play. But I'm going to be honest, I did not expect to pull this one out. I'm already pretty low on health. And I wasn't sure how much health Camilla had. As it turns out, she doesn't have that much. But I've kind of assumed, being one of the head honchos of this Dracula, revival cult, that she was going to be, she was going to have a lot of health and be a major boss. I barely managed to put my defense back up, which I think saved my life. And yeah, I take care of her with just a sliver of health left. You go, Nathan. Huh. Apparently she was part red-tailed hawk, judging by the noise she made when she crumbled to dust. Anyway, let's go in here and get our reward. The rock wing, not the griffin wing, because this game's different. Our infinite leaping is different. So yeah, this is basically the griffin wing from earlier games, or the gravity jump, whatever it's called. It lets you fly. Which is awesome. I love this power-up. It's fantastic. And they make pretty good use of it, even though you get it close to the end of the game. So now all I need to do is get back to the save point, and not, completely fail to take advantage of what just happened. This actually is kind of amazing. So these evil hands got me over and over again, but they attacked me so much that they actually gave me invincibility frames, so the lizard men didn't attack me once. I am fairly certain if the lizard men had gotten off a single attack, even with my defense up, I would have died. So this is as clutch gets. I claim no credit for this. Honestly, I think I have to give a hand to the evil hands. Though they already have one, so why would I bother? Anyway, enough idiotic puns. Let's just leap out of this horrible place. We left behind a couple of upgrades, and I am going to miss those later. But, oh, by the way, this stuff is because I forgot what was the actual attack. Sorry, the actual special move button. I rebound the controls in this game. So, since I hadn't used a special move for a while, it did kind of confuse me which was the special move. There's a little bonus here, which is kind of nice. I also like how, in sort of a classic tradition, when you hit the ceiling, Now that I think about it, this may be the first game where that happened, because Symphony of the Night introduced the gravity jump. But in that game, I'm pretty sure you just crunch your head against the top of the ceiling. Either way, Harmony of Dissonance followed in those footsteps, where you actually hit the ceiling with your feet. I don't know how you know to turn upside down whenever it happens, but Nathan is a professional vampire killer, so maybe he just can do that. It kind of makes you wonder if they have legends about these secret artifacts in vampire killing circles, you know? Do they know about the thing that lets you just fly? Seems like that would be very useful for fighting Dracula. So there's a power-up here that we came back for. There's actually another thing in the underground warehouse which we came back for. Please don't mind my horrendous combat skills against this guy. I just stood around and let him start attacking. There we go. Seeing an HP max on the screen does kind of tend to make me feel impetuous and to take risks I probably shouldn't, because I know I can just heal all my health afterwards. But here is an enemy against whom I definitely will not be impetuous. This is Lilith, one of 2 higher levels of the succubus. The other one is called a fallen angel and is even more difficult, I believe. But they have the same attacks, which is just they're surrounded by these horrible little circular, spell things. These rings, and they can send them at you like crazy. You'll notice she already shaved off practically my entire health bar. That took like 15 seconds. So it's time we got to save room. I only left this in because it is kind of fun to see me running around like a chicken with my head cut off when I have like 10 health left. Oh, by the way, another thing about this, now that we're through this area, they've added succubi to some of the areas where there used to be just, box-pushing puzzles and boneheads. So, fun way to punish me for losing all my health here. I also have to deal with a bunch of succubi. So, I'm going to go back to that room, and this time, I'm a little better prepared. But I'm going to be honest, it doesn't make much of a difference. I am mostly here just to get that upgrade and get out. I don't know if I thought maybe I'd distract her and that would keep me alive for longer. Not necessarily true, especially when she can do that frickin' cheap enemy thing that they do in this game, where they just hide off screen so you can't hit them. But given she's doing more than 100 health every attack, yeah, I'm not going to stick around to see what other tricks she has up her sleeve. What I am going to do is we're going to go in reverse up this pit. What a refreshing change of pace. It looks so different from this perspective. Ah, who am I kidding? It looks exactly the same. Pausing here just to get my bearings. For the rest of this episode, we are mostly going to be sort of mopping up all of the different things we couldn't do before, because the Rockwing really does let you get so many interesting things here. And it makes getting around so much easier, too. So we're going to be taking care of that before going to the final area, which you can only get to with the Rockwing. And then, of course, we're going to have to take care of Hugh. Because she mentioned, Hugh's already been approved of by Dracula, which presumably means he's already applied for a job with Dracula. And we can't let that happen. We can't let Hugh be Nathan tested, Dracula approved. So yeah, now that I'm a little higher level, I can defeat Frozen Shades in 2 hits, which is quite nice. There's also a few upgrades that I could have gotten before and didn't, which is kind of odd. Knowing how much of a chicken I am, you'd think I would have gotten these as soon as I possibly could. Especially given that several of them are health upgrades. That could have saved me a little bit of a heartache. But yeah, I think what probably happened is that I collected these on a playthrough where not a playthrough. I collected these when, you know, I died and then didn't save, and the next time I went through I just forgot to do it again. So more enemies are being replaced here. We see in this room now, instead of the enemies that were here before, the axe armors and electroskeletons, we now have wind demons. These guys are okay, they're kind of interesting to fight, but not among the most interesting demons. They're sort of halfway along the line for both fairness and fun. My favorite might actually be the Earth Demon from right in the beginning, because his attack just is rather unusual, but not hard to dodge if you know what you're doing. One thing I don't like about the Wind Demons is because there's two of them in this room, which is a very centrally located room, like you have to go here all the time. You end up having to deal with these guys a lot, and they just have that annoying move. With those wind scythes that they send out, they start off just surrounding the enemy, so they prevent you from attacking the enemy for, 5 to 10 seconds when they start their attacks. It just drags it out. They take a little too long to fight. But that's okay. Things could be worse. There could be ice demons. There's more enemies being replaced here. So now instead of the enemies we had here, which were the soldier skeletons and electroskeletons, we have imps from the underground gallery and forest armors. Which is kind of funny. It makes you think the imps and the forest armors go together. But these guys didn't appear in the same area. Even though the underground gallery is theoretically where the forest armors should have showed up. Because they're grass-themed. I know, it's very bizarre. They don't put them in with poison armors. We see one here. Which, now that I think about it, I'm actually very glad they didn't put any poison armors here. So, thanks, Koji Horie. Smart decision. Limit the poison armors as much as possible. I actually kind of like the imps, because even though they have that annoying pebble attack, which almost always hits you, it does virtually no damage, and these guys almost always drop a big heart when you kill them, which means they're a really nice way to restock on hearts quickly. I would actually recommend just going through this room over and over again if you're looking for hearts. There's other places where you can grind hearts as well. Another great thing, now that we have the ability to fly, we don't need to worry about this stupid level design. The level's our oyster. We go wherever the hell we want. Except when there's ceilings. Ceilings are still kind of getting in the way. There we go. That's a virtually ideal way to kill those guys, what I just did there. Start off getting a few hits in, then back off a bit while their scythes come out. Then, this is not an ideal way to fight them, jumping into them. One annoying thing about the way that this game changes when you get the Rock Wing is that the game starts keeping in mind that you can fly anywhere you want, which means the enemies start to move a lot up and down. This is actually pretty annoying because the Rock Wing is not very easily controllable. When you use it, you just zoom up into the air. And so the result is the game sort of assumes you can fly, so why not have enemies that go all over the place? But flying is actually not as easy to use in combat as you would think. It's a bit awkward. The enemies, of course, are not awkward at all when they fly because they've been flying their whole lives. So here we can go into this room, which is not the next area, but it does have some tough new enemies like this werehorse. There's a lot of enemies in this game that are just called were-something. There we go. Werehorses can be pretty difficult because their attack slams across the ground and throws up those pebbles. There's going to be a later enemy that's even worse in that department. But this is actually my favorite room in the game, I would say, just in terms of aesthetics. Even though it makes no sense that the moon would be this huge, because, it's weird. The moon is made to be bigger in rooms that you get to later, as if the night has, gone on longer, and so the moon's bigger because, it's kind of closer. I don't know what I'm talking about, but yeah. The funny thing about that, though, is they don't change the size of the moon in previous rooms. So it looks more like the moon is just really big from some rooms in this castle, and tiny in others. Which I guess you could say is part of the castle's magic, but that's kind of retconning. Anyway, but I do just love the huge moon in the background here against the castle battlements. It's a really cool image. And there's some armor that I won't end up getting, because I can't get to that area before it will despawn. I have no idea what that is. I think it might have just been gold armor, that's what it looks like. Or possibly even bronze armor. If so, then I haven't missed out on much. But I'll never know, it's, a mystery. A tantalizing mystery that I'll never get to see. I really like this image of the moon. You know, it's nice and craggy. It has the proper detail you'd expect. And, you know, since this game is called Circle of the Moon, and there's a lot of talk about, you know, the moon is full, you know, when the moon sets, like, all this stuff will happen. It's good that they focus on the moon in the visual department. Because, you know, it's a good symbol. You know, the influence of the moon is also something that sort of psychologically is pretty cool when you consider what happens to our friend Hugh. You know, he's driven mad by jealousy of Nathan and by, you know, being upset that his dad didn't trust him with the whip. And so it's like he goes a little mad, right? He has a problem with lunacy, which literally is being under the influence of the moon. That's the reason why it's called that. Okay, we're just heading back here. Yeah, there's quite a few more upgrades to get. Some that we can get with the Rockwing, and some that I just forgot about earlier, and I'm not entirely sure why. There are now no more upgrades in the game that we will not be able to get. Pretty much anything that's left is just going to be because we haven't been to the area where it is yet. The final upgrade we're going to get from this last area is also not one that is going to be mobility-based. So basically, the Metroidvania segment of this game is now over. From now on, it's going to be more like, you know, Demon's Souls or like other Castlevania games. So moving on here. So this is actually the room in which you can move on to this next final area. Pretty tough area, but also one of my favorites in the game. The Observation Tower. Basically the equivalent to the top floor or the Master's floor in other parts of the game. Although funnily enough, in a lot of areas that are this high up in Dracula's castle, in other games, you actually fight Dracula here. But here, Dracula's in the middle of the castle, kind of like Symphony of the Night, and you fight someone different here. You also fight these legions, who are actually pretty easy enemies. The main thing that's difficult about them is just getting up to where they are to do damage, and dealing with their kind of erratic movement, so they can kind of trick you. Their appearance is also really grotesque, kind of Junji Ito inspired. I've mentioned Junji Ito a lot in this, but I don't know, something about this game and its weird kind of lo-fi aesthetic reminds me of his horror stories. Also the tentacles probably has something to do with it, and the skull motifs. I really don't know how influential Junji Ito was in Japan at this time. I know that a lot of his stories had been published by like the early 2000s when this game came out. But I think he didn't really hit international prominence until Uzumaki became famous in like the mid to late 2000s. I don't remember when it was written. I think it was written maybe 2003. But either way, it's entirely possible these guys have heard of Junji Ito. It's also possible that they just were coming up with grotesque enemy designs, and, you know, it's sort of independent invention. The observation tower has lots of little branching areas. I guess kind of appropriate for a tower. But having been hit by the legions a lot here, I'm deciding to go out now. We do still have quite a few more upgrades to get. I was just waiting for the curse to wear off so I could see if there's a hidden room here. I really shouldn't have, because you can see a doorway right above me, which means there'd be nowhere for the hidden doorway to go. Anyway, let's head back out. There's actually some upgrades to discover in this very room, right below the entrance to the observation tower, including an area that has some enemies that, as far as I can tell, appear nowhere else in the game. These are wind armors. Also, one of the easiest armor enemies in the game, because if you get outside of their attack range, they literally don't hit you. They have technically a projectile, but it doesn't move along the screen, so you can just get out of the range of it. The one thing that might trick you with these guys is their range is a little bigger than you might suspect. But yeah, overall, pretty easy enemies. I'm kind of surprised they bothered to put them in. They could have just put, like, holy armors here, which actually would have been pretty difficult to deal with in these cramped environments. No, but what we're actually going to do at this point is we are going back to that hallway I chickened out of exploring earlier. Now I've seen plenty of grizzlies, and I'm used to dealing with them. You know, just play dead. That's what you gotta do. By play dead, I mean, of course, play that they're dead. And the easiest way to pretend that they're dead is to kill them. So yeah, we're heading back here. Some hyenas and jaguars in here. No big deal. We've dealt with their kind. So I was assuming that this was actually an alternate entrance to the observation tower, but I'd forgotten the observation tower is fairly linear, so this is actually a totally different part of the castle. It's just also very high up. It's interesting. The design of this castle, which of course is not one of Dracula's castles, it's just some castle in Austria that Camilla decided to take over to bring him back towards, is there's the main area, you know, on the ground floor. There's a lot of underground areas, and then there's basically 3 different towers. So on the left-hand side, you have the machine tower, which you explore first. On the right-hand side, the chapel tower. And, you know, those have very different functions and very different styles, and they're also very different from the whole rest of the game. Oh, by the way, we do find another warp room here. So it turns out I was wrong about the warp rooms. There aren't just 3 for the whole game. There's just 3 for almost the entire game. There's actually 5 total. Anyway, so I was going to say, so there's the machine tower on the left, the chapel tower on the right, and then right in the middle you have the observation tower. Which is kind of a funny name for it. Like, castles don't need a single observation tower, because all of the upper parts of the castle are for observation. It's not really a function you associate with a whole big part of the castle. But oh well. What it really looks like is that it would be some kind of dungeon or keep, you know, to hold prisoners. A lot of people forget that was the main point of a castle for a long time. It was just to be secure. You know, you could hide there when you were fighting a war. Or you could keep prisoners there, and it would be a way to keep them from being rescued. But yeah, this is a pretty neat looking room. You don't get an unobstructed view of the moon as well in this room as you do in the other one, which is why I don't like it as much. But I do like the style of these external battlements areas. They're some of my favorite parts of the game. So there's some legions in here, but in addition, there is a fallen angel, which I think is the most powerful version of the Lilith. But also here, and this is probably the reason that we have a warp room near here, is the battle arena. This is the first battle arena in Castlevania history, and also probably the strangest. So you get to pick your sub-weapon here. There's all of them, so you can pick and choose. The one that you already have, of course, will just be a heart. And I'll let the game itself explain it. So yeah, you cannot use the dual setup system in the arena, which is a crutch that you probably didn't even realize you were leaning on until you come here. Not getting to use DSS here is tough. So let's check it out. Here's the first room, already fairly punishing. We've got a were-jaguar here and a werewolf. You may have also noticed something else which is very jarring and disturbing. There is no music in the entire battle arena. It's bizarre. It just doesn't feel right. Playing this game without music, it almost feels like this turned into some kind of weird old-fashioned PC game or something. Or like something didn't load, is what it feels like. I do not like the battle arena in this game. Not only is it very bizarre, and possibly the most broken and unbalanced part of an already very broken and unbalanced game, but in addition, just playing through it is not that fun because of the lack of music and just the brutality of it. I don't know why they wouldn't let you use DSS here. I suppose because it's supposed to test your mettle in fighting normal combat. But the thing is, this game's enemies were not designed to be fought with normal combat. They were designed with that crutch of the DSS system in mind. So the idea of a whole giant area, and this area is actually pretty big. I think there's like 10 rooms to this place. A whole big area where you cannot use DSS. It's just kind of awful. We did get some soldier fatigues in here, which is a pretty good, like, endgame armor item. So I'm not too upset. But despite not being upset, I'm also not going to keep going. That first 3 rooms was good enough for me. We will be coming back to the battle arena later. I make no promises about me beating it. The battle arena is the toughest thing in the game, and it is also, like, the grindiest thing in the game. You probably cannot get through the battle arena totally until you've fought, like, the first 10 or so rooms. Like, maybe 20 times. You should probably be at, like, level 50 to tackle the battle arena. It's insane. It is even harder, like, actually much harder, to get through the arena than it is to beat the final version of Dracula. Which, you'll soon see when we get to the finale. That's so frickin' difficult that the fact that the battle arena is harder is just, it's wrong. Like, they shouldn't have done that. So one last thing I'm going to do here, because we can fly, I'm going to go back up to the place where we had, my greatest victory against a Dramalek, and I'm going to thoroughly explore that map, which does have a practical purpose. Please don't think the only reason I'm doing this is to show off. It's because if you explore more of the map, and that makes that one DSS spell increase your defense more. So, I need this. It's also, I'm not doing this just so that I can, completely, show off by fighting scrub enemies and killing them in one hit. That's not what this was about. This was about improving my defense. So it was pragmatic. There's nothing aesthetic about this. This is kind of a cool room without a Dramalek in it. I also like this one area where you get a little view of the moon. Looking much like more gleaming in this than it is in other areas. I also like these 3 statues of monks just chilling. They're like exactly the same. It's kind of weird. That's actually not very reminiscent of Catholic iconography, but whatever. Anyway, that's all for tonight, guys. See you next time.